Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have all of you here with us, joining us for episode 80. We've hit the big 80, episode 80 of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We recently got a chance, an opportunity to watch all six of the brand new Tales of the Empire episodes. Going to be our main topic of discussion during today's podcast. Again, glad to have you here. Want to say a quick thank you to all those of you who are subscribed over to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. All 420 of you over there, we appreciate you so very much as we continue that climb towards the big 500 mark. If you're listening or watching the video version of the podcast and not yet subscribed over on YouTube, definitely check us out over there and hit the subscribe button. Additionally, you can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com. Send us your Star Wars related questions, thoughts, or otherwise. We'd love to showcase them here on the pod. Additionally, the Hoth Hangout podcast is findable wherever you get your pods, including both Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review because we would very much appreciate it. And it also does allow the podcast to be more easily discovered by other people as well. You can also find us on the socials, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X. We are at Hoth Hangout on each of those. And again, the link for the Hoth Hangout community Discord server down in the show notes below of today's episode. Definitely check it out and see everything that the community Discord server has to offer. Again, that link down in today's episode's show notes. And as we get into today's discussion, kind of the question we're going to be looking at mainly, something we want to tease now and then talk about more fully towards the end of the podcast, is what other Tales stories would you be interested in seeing? What would you like to see next in terms of a Tales story? We've got Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire. What's coming soon? Let us know down in the comments or anywhere you can contact us what you want to see next in terms of the next Tales show. Having said all of that, before we get into our discussion of anything Tales of the Empire related, Joey, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
Doing well, man. It's been a crazy couple of weeks with Star Wars. Let's be honest. We've got Bad Batch. We've had, the end of Bad Batch. We've had Tales of the Empire. We've had trailer after trailer about different things. It's been a wild couple of weeks here. And spoiler alert about what we're going to talk about next week. It's nothing. We're taking a break, but it's been a really good time the past couple of weeks, and let's finish strong and talk about a little bit of Tales of the Empire. I'm excited, and just wanted to show off my hat here. By the way,
Mm.
Chicago Cubs champions 2016. One of my favorite hats. Just thought I'd share it real quick, and maybe because I didn't shave my head today, but still, it's a really cool hat.
I don't know if I've ever told you this, but one of my roommates in college that year was a Chicago Cubs fan, massive Chicago Cubs
Oh
fan.
my
Uh,
gosh.
uh, Grew up in Naperville, which I think is a
Oh,
suburb of Chicago,
it is. Yes.
and he was like so stoked that they won the World Series that year. So
Yeah.
um,
Actually
I
won
remember.
on well, actually won on my birthday. So happy birthday to me that year.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Well, as we reminisce on the 2016 Cubs, I would be remiss if I did not mention the 2014 Royals. Go Royals! Uh,
Nice.
I don't. I have to say that because I think the Cubs are gonna have another World Series before the Royals do. So gotta
Uh,
gotta.
uh, I don't know. I think it's
Well,
one per like 3 generations, I think that we get, or
yeah,
5 generations.
we'll both just bask in the mediocrity of our teams for now until one of them can eventually get another World Series. But yeah, yeah, excited to talk about some Tales of the Empire today. Like you mentioned, we have not taken an off week for a podcast episode probably in like, gosh, I don't know, 2, 3 months, maybe something at least. Definitely since before Bad Batch started. So we will be no podcasting next week, but we'll be back the week after that. I believe we're doing a trivia episode 2 weeks from now. Isn't that right? Or at least according
Oh,
to
I don't
the
know if
note.
we've determined surely if
T-
we're gonna
To
do that
be
yat
to be determined.
Me and Gibber were
Potentially,
talking about other thing me and
Whoa,
Gibber were
whoa,
talking about
whoa,
other things.
whoa.
The topic of 2 weeks episode from now to be determined, but the important thing, we're taking next week off to rest and kind of catch our breath after Bad Batch as we prepare for the run of Acolyte, which is coming in officially less than a month from now. Exciting to note there. But as we move into sort of our news segment for today's podcast, before we talk about anything related to Tales of the Empire, The first piece of news, probably, I mean, not probably, definitely the biggest piece of news coming out of Star Wars in the past week is that the official confirmation that Rogue Squadron is again in the works, being directed by whom it was originally intended to be directed by when it was announced, I believe 4 years ago for the first time. Director and writer Patty Jenkins. The movie, which was originally slated to have a 2023 release date, was canceled, I believe, in 2022. And now, of course, we are nearly halfway through 2024 and it is being revitalized. No word as of when this is going to come out officially, but my best guess, I would say maybe like holidays 2025, maybe summer 2025, since it's already been something that's kind of been on the books with Disney for a while. But my best guess would probably be holiday 2025. But Joey, I wanted to ask you in regards to Rogue Squadron. I feel like, I mean, we've always talked about maybe doing an episode someday where we take someone like myself, whose favorite trilogy. Well, I don't know about my favorite trilogy, but like I have a love for the prequels in a way that a lot of people don't. Someone like yourself who definitely has that love for the originals. Um, so when you look at like me versus you, I feel like I'm
Me.
not as
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm
go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I'm definitely gonna see this, I'm gonna be
Yeah, yeah.
excited for it. I feel like the folks who are, like, uh who the original trilogy is, like, for sure their biggest, like, fandom, or the thing they're the fan of, um, probably this is a movie that would speak to them the most. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, for example, I'm at, like, a 7.5 in terms of my excitement for this.
Mhm.
How would you gauge yourself in that
Eh,
regard?
I mean, I think 7.58 would be accurate for me too. So,
Okay.
obviously the squadron, is a big deal, but you know, I, I I'm not quite sure exactly what to expect either. So I
Mm,
guess that's I try to not get too much into the weeds of like exactly what the plot lines and all that stuff are like with Acolyte with Skeleton Crew. I've read the synopsis for those. I've already forgot them. I have no idea exactly what's gonna happen until we. That's just how my mind works. I got too many things going on. So, especially with this one, I'm excited for it. It's Star Wars, like I said. You could throw anything and throw Star Wars on it. I was thinking about what is that one, the Zack Snyder one that came out over the
Justice League? Oh. Oh,
the
the Star Wars thing, Rebel
the
Moon?
Star Wars, Rebel Moon, yeah, right. If that was like actually Star Wars, I would have been probably more into it because it was Star Wars, But
Mhm.
because it wasn't, I'm like, it's fine. So, uh, so I would say 7.58. I'm not like super super excited for it, but like I'm not like over the moon like when Ahsoka was, because although maybe I grew up with the original trilogy, I
Mhm.
think it was still, I was a child then, so I sure I have memories of it, but in all honesty, things like Rebels, Clone Wars, even with you with their prequels, those are ones that I really connect with. I will admit, I can't believe I'm saying these words out loud, but that's the truth is, when I was much more of a coherent type of adult, like watching those, I connected with them. Now maybe I didn't like them as much as the original trilogy, but I definitely have memories of me waiting at midnight for the midnight show for those. So those kind of memories are there. And um, recently somebody had mentioned that some of these things really connect like the nostalgia factor into a
Mhm.
lot of it, and that's why you enjoy it so much. The cool thing is that there's a whole generation of people that have those same types of feelings towards it. So it's so cool to be able to talk across generations, because I mean, let's be honest, you and I different generations, so I think it's just a cool thing that we're able to connect with. And but with this one, yeah, I'm definitely excited to see it. As much as I don't know about it, it's Star Wars, so I'm here for it.
Yeah. I just wanna take note, of all of the stuff you just said, the thing that stood out to me the most was that you think Attack of the Clones is a great movie. I heard you say that, right? No, but
This will be my last episode. The reason for the break next week is that I'm actually leaving the podcast. Goodbye. Ben's interviewing for
Yeah.
another co-host.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you said. Like, yeah, I'm looking forward to this movie. I think going into it, there's not going to be that level of hype that there might be with something like Mandalorian and Grogu, which is probably gonna come out after this does actually. Um, but I think it could be also at the same time kind of that Rogue One style film where
Right.
it doesn't get quite as much hype as the sequels did at the time, but ends up being I would argue a better movie. So anyways, yeah, this is coming out at a time we do not know yet, but likely at least a year, if not 2 years away. So be on the lookout for Rogue Squadron officially coming back with director and writer Patty Jenkins. So be on the lookout for more announcements about the official release date of that, hopefully sometime in the coming months. Next piece of news is more in the sphere of gaming, which both you and I kind of have have our what's the word I'm looking for? Our I was gonna say like our fingers, but I was looking for something more uh like animal like. Anyways, we we both have experience in the gaming sphere, and, Fall Guys is a game that actually, I think this was the game that is, like, the reason we met one another, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So I think this is the first time we've ever actually talked about Fall Guys on this podcast.
It might be.
80 episodes yeah, 80 episodes in and, the Fall Guys Star Wars crossover here is finally happening. We've been waiting so long for it. Actually, to be honest, I really haven't played Fall Guys in quite some time, with the exception of maybe one time actually, but anyways, like, so when I saw this announcement, I was like, "Oh, look, that's cool. That might be a reason for me to, like, open it back up and get those
Mhm.
skins and then play for a couple hours and then maybe take another hiatus, but, anyways, the big announcement, of course, with Fall Guys Star Wars crossover is that there are some, pretty cool skins in the game. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, you can see the Chewbacca and Han Solo skin on display here. Joey, I actually don't know, are there any other skins that are available as part of this package,
Yeah,
and
so in it
have you picked them up?
question 1, yes, there are 2 more skins. There's a Stormtrooper one and also a Boba Fett,
Ooh.
skin in there as well, so those are pretty cool. Um, there's also, if you win a match in Fall Guys, there's, like, the celebration screen. So the 2 celebration screens that are available is that the characters in Fall Guys, we call them beans. So, the bean, if you win, you end up, in one of them, you go down and you end up in carbonite, so that's one. And then the second one is that you fall into the Sarlacc pit. So those are the 2
Mm,
celebrations if you win. And, more importantly, number 2, yes, Ben, I did go get all of these skins and celebrations.
I love it. I think I still have enough, kudos left over in my bank on that game to maybe pick those up too. I think I know what I'm doing for the first 5 minutes after we hop off the podcast tonight, but, all you Fall Guys people out there, new skins, Star Wars skins coming to the game or already in the game, actually. Check them out in the Fall Guys store and, pick them up. Pretty cool looking, I will say. I need to check out what the Stormtrooper one looks like, especially I want because I think I've definitely seen these 2 in front of me, and I think I've actually seen the other one now that you mention it, but the Stormtrooper one is the one I probably will most wanna pick up, so anyways, check it out in a Fall Guys game near you. Our last piece of news for today is something that, we kind of touched on, I believe, during last week or no, I think it was there's the Fall Guys, the, Stormtrooper skin if you're
Stormtrooper.
watching the video version of the podcast.
He's chunky, he's chunky.
That is a chonky Stormtrooper, yeah. It's a new phone background right there.
Too much blue milk.
Yeah, that'd be great, a great celebration, like, you
Oh, it
win a
would be.
drinking blue milk.
Maybe that's when
Uh,
if when the Luke skin comes, that'd be great.
yeah, yeah, that's the DLC celebration or something. Our last piece of news today is something we kind of have already touched on here on the I'll Hangout YouTube channel, but if you're a audio podcast only listener, you probably haven't heard us talk about this yet. Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, a new show coming, I believe, in September 2024 this year. Kind of bringing that usual Lego vibe, the comedy, the humor mixed in with the actual plot. Just something that going into the Lego movie, I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be whatever. It is what it is." And then you walk away, you're like, "Wow, that's something that not only kids but adults really could have enjoyed too." And I would hope that this show is no different. I imagine it won't be. You and I got to watch the trailer for this together. I believe it was only about 90 seconds long, and lots of fun stuff to take away. Essentially, the world is like being turned upside down and like broken apart, so to speak. The pieces of the Legos, and, like nothing makes sense. Like there's Ewok bounty hunters and stuff like that. But the highlight of the trailer was, uh, of course, Darth Jar Jar at the end, and
Yes.
he says something like, "Misa gonna hurt you, sir," or something like that. Uh,
Right.
finally bringing to fruition the wish that so many have had in the Star Wars community for years and years of seeing a Sith Jar Jar come to life, and officially confirming, I believe, as you said, Joey, during our watch through the Star Wars What If show. It might be
Right.
canon now. It might be canon.
Yep. Multiverse is now canon in Star Wars.
Yep, Jar Jar is officially a Sith.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
this is the they introduce it with like the world between worlds, right? And maybe this is the finally the other side that maybe we never understood about it.
that's actually the climax of the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu movie, is that Darth Jar Jar pops out of one of those portals and he's like, "Misa gonna hurt you, sir."
But it's the Lego minifigure version. It's not like the full
Yes,
size.
yes.
It's not the
That
full size
way
Jar Jar.
that way they kinda go with, like, the what is it? The end of the Spider-Verse effect, where when people come from different worlds, they
Yeah.
still occupy the way their world looks in the other world.
Right.
Yeah,
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 that's
I
actually
got
good.
you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did we just make a whole great idea? I think so.
I'm telling you, Disney, hire us. Woo. Oh, yeah, this is coming to I think Disney Plus, in September of later this year, so, a great show for anyone in the family, honestly. I think Lego, shows do this really well, just, like, kind of playing that line between having stuff that is, like, subtly adult humor while still being, like, kind of friendly for kids at the same time, so, yeah, really excited for this, a fun announcement that we got in the last week as well. Be on the lookout this coming September for Lego Star Wars: Rebuild the Galaxy. And, before we view our viewer comments and polls prior to getting into our discussion, Joey, I know you had a little collection update for all of us.
Yeah. So a friend came to visit the over the weekend, and she actually brought me something Star Wars related as a gift. Our friend Nestle, great friend
Mhm.
of mine, and Ben has gotten to know her a little bit over the time here. So, check out what she got me. It's pretty cool.
The grand reveal. For those of you
It's like a
listening and not
oh,
watching the video version, it is an incredible, almost looks like a laser printed woodworking of a star destroyer with a bunch of other like TIE fighters and X-wings. Is it laser printed on wood, Joey? What is that?
yeah, it's like either laser printed, burnt in or something like that. I mean, it's a really cool piece that she
That's
picked up for
awesome.
me. There was a local artist she saw or she met and she saw it and she's like, "Oh, I need to get that for him." So she ended up getting it for me. How cool is this, huh?
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, and the Death
I do
Star's
have
there on the right side. I
yeah,
didn't
the
even
Death
notice
Star, yeah.
that.
Yeah, I can't even see my
Right.
face here. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I don't know where to put it yet. It's kind of a larger piece, so it's pretty nice though. So thanks,
Yeah.
Nestle.
Shout out Nestle. Yeah, if you're able to put that somewhere up in the view of the camera, that's a nice backdrop piece
I'm
right
just gonna
there.
hold it. Just gonna hold it right
Yeah.
here the entire time.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so Tales of the Empire. No, I'm just kidding. But yes,
That's super
pretty
cool.
cool piece. Yeah.
That's awesome. A cool addition, a fine addition to your collection,
That's yeah.
as, Mr. Grievous might say, but Uh, we asked you last week during our finale watch through of The Bad Batch, will we see The Bad Batch again? The folks over on the YouTube community tab said yes, with 73% of the vote going in the affirmative that we will see The Bad Batch again in the future, while 27% said no. And in the shock of the century, the folks on Twitter, 100% optimists in this regard. They said, "Yes, we will see the Bad Batch again in the future." I take it all back, people over on Twitter. You're not pessimists. With
Amazing. I can't believe it.
yeah.
We finally flipped them.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
all it took was Omega.
Omega. Yeah, she's the one that would do it, though. She's the most optimistic character we've seen in Star Wars maybe ever. So, shout out to those of you that voted. We'll have another poll available This week, be on the lookout on the YouTube community tab or over on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can vote in this coming week's poll and have your voice heard for next week's episode, or I guess 2 weeks from now's episode of the podcast, since we'll be taking a hiatus next week. But be on the lookout this week once again for that poll, which will be covering something Tales of the Jedi related, or just more generally, or excuse me, Tales of the Empire related, or just more generally Tales shows related. So check out that poll in either of those two places. We did have a comment that I managed to skip over because I'm skipping around today. I guess that's how we're doing today's podcast. From
Oh,
Spy on
Gibbo's so
Sports.
Gibbo's so happy to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah, there was
This
like,
is the episode this is the episode to do it.
was that last week or 2 weeks ago when we were
It's 2
doing a
weeks
review?
ago.
And on our podcast, we just kinda, well, now we have the check boxes, but this was the week before we started using check boxes, and I was like, "Bing, bing, bong, bong, bong," and I was, like, jumping all around.
And
Um
I'm just panic I wish I wanna go back and look at my face during that. I'm like, "What are you going? What are you doing?"
I was just keeping us on our toes,
Yeah. Mhm, mhm.
But tonight, I'm vouching and I'm pledging to go in order of how we've written it in the show notes. You heard it here.
We'll see.
But, yeah, we'll see. Our one comment we wanted to showcase today, from last week's reaction to the Bad Batch season finale was from, the one and only Spy on Sports. Hope you're doing well, Spy on Sports. Thanks for your comment. He says, "Howdy, fellers. Always fun to listen to you guys talk about your favorite Star Wars storylines. Just couldn't get into Bad Batch, and a good bit of that is due to animation. Star Wars or Spy on Sports, our local person who's not the biggest fan of most Star Wars animation, and that's okay. He also goes on to say, I could see Bad Batch characters making a guest appearance in future films or live action series. I sure hope so. I think Bad
Mhm.
Batch in animation in the future is probably pretty likely, and I'm hopeful for the for in live action. So I think that'd be pretty cool, honestly. But
I'm just
hey, here's
just saying when we got all the Rebels characters, Ahsoka, all in live action, we all lost it. So I think this is
mhm,
a good opportunity. I think that was a good test to see, and I think the Bad Batch characters would also be successful.
definitely. And if it's any consolation, Spy on Sports, the next show that's going to be heavy into the Star Wars verse is a live action show in Acolyte. So we have that to look forward to as well. Again, less than a month away from Acolyte. It's hard to believe, but Spy on Sports, shout out to you and thank you for your wonderful comment. We appreciate you very much. And having said all that, time to move into our discussion of Tales of the Empire. Once again, there were 6 episodes of this show. First 3 episodes focusing on the character of Morgan Elsbeth. The final 3 episodes focusing on the character of Barriss Offee. Let me ask you this, Joey. Going into the show, did you have any hunches about, or maybe you didn't, maybe you felt evenly about it. Did you have any hunches about whether you were going to be more likely to enjoy the Morgan Elsbeth story or more likely to join the Barriss Offee story? And did the outcome of our watch through change how you viewed either of those things?
I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think the Bear Sophie story was more what I was, more excited for because
Mhm.
of the stories that we kind of already knew. She had a very interesting story going, leaving the Clone Wars animated series. So it's more of like, where we pick off. Whereas the Morgan Elspeth story, we kind of knew just from the trailers it looked like more of an origin story, which again, not terrible, but we kind of know what happens in Morgan at the end,
Mhm.
So I think for me it was just more interesting to see Barris's story after the Clone Wars, what happens to her going into it, and I would say I don't know, I'm about even as far as the happiness satisfaction that I got from both stories actually.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I feel similarly. I definitely was more anticipating Barris's story going into it. And I think having seen both of them, and you and I will give our ratings of kind of each portion of Tales of the Empire at the end of today's episode. But I still felt relatively even about the both of them. But I think kind of how I feel about them in retrospect after watching it is similar to the level of expectation I had for each character's set of episodes. So, um, kind of just kind of a general sense of where both of us were at going into it, and then where we're both at now, having seen it. Um, we started off with the Morgan Elsbeth episodes, and these were, I thought, more cleverly titled, more cleverly named. I really, the path of fear, path of anger, the path of hate, of course, alluding to the path of the dark side in totality. And you kind of get to slowly go down that path with Morgan Elsbeth. One thing I will say, and this is not just Morgan's story, but this is kind of Barris's story as well. I feel like while Tales of the Empire, and this is kind of true of Tales of the Jedi too, while they're both, I think, great shows. We talked about this at the end of both. When you're done with it, you're like, man, I loved that, and also I wanted so much more. Um, it was just, you know, it was really good storytelling, but at the same time, it just felt like you were missing pieces. So, having said all of that, I wanna keep that in mind as we talk about these episodes, because sometimes, especially between the episodes, it felt like a little bit jarring to jump through time with these characters, because you almost are on this accelerated path with them. And Morgan is a good example of that. Like, in the first episode, for example, when it opens up with the Battle of Dathomir against the Separatist droid army, and she's with her sisters, um, like, the place where she's at in that episode is so, I mean, it's the same path, but it's the beginning of the path of the end of the 3rd episode, which all of it happens in, like, 45 minutes, and you're like, "Whoa." Like, normally,
Mhm,
that would be
mhm.
told over the course of a season or an entire movie, and
Right.
it just feels a little abrupt. That would be my one criticism of, I guess, both Tales of the Empire, stories we got, but having said that, I think they still did a pretty good job with both of them. And so, like I said, we open up with the Battle of Dathomir. The Separatists are attacking the planet of Dathomir, the home of the Night Sisters, and of course, we get to see not only Morgan's mother, who I believe is named Selena in this scene, and actually sacrifices herself for Morgan. Still not clear if this is like Morgan's actual birth mother or if this is
Mm,
like the Night Sister mother,
right.
because she was just referred to by mother, as far as I'm aware. But of course, we do see General Grievous. Did it feel? I don't know. Did Grievous, and maybe this is a good question for Vader in next episode. Did Grievous and Vader feel clickbaity at all to you?
Did they look click I mean, kind of. They get thrown in there really quick. I see their purpose there, but I feel like that it was just a little bit too quick. Their appearances, their cameos.
Mhm.
I mean, Grievous just kind of comes in there, takes Grievous goes in there, takes a few lives there, and then Vader comes in later on. We'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, so I can feel that. I could sense that as well. It's just like, I mean, I get it. They are in the right place for it, but at the same time, it almost felt like, just a really, really short version of like when Asajj came into Bad Batch. Just like, oh, here they
Right.
are, by the way. They were in the trailer. How exciting! And then they're gone in a second.
Yeah, I mean, and even it's even like a shortened version of that. Like Vader had, or excuse me, Grievous had like maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes of screen time. Vader had even less than that. So on one hand, like, it kind of felt like they were using the characters to gain viewership, but it's just cool to see them, I think, in any context. And man, General Grievous really just going ham on on the Dathomir sisters in this scene. Like, I had forgotten what it was like to see him like menacing like that in either, we've seen him in live action and in animation, but either way, just to see what his character is capable of. So at that point, after escaping the three commando droids, she falls pretty exhausted in the battlefield. It's not looking great for her at this moment in the show. I was like, "Ooh, how the heck is she going to get out of this?" By the way, these commando droids, I believe they're called. Um, I I I feel like I mean, we've seen them in animation before. I feel like they just gave off a tougher presence in this show. I don't know what it was
Hmm.
about this scene. I don't remember them being quite that difficult to deal with in other shows, but maybe I'm misremembering in that
Yeah,
regard.
and yeah, this particular one was able to find her in a tree. It
Mhm.
seemed like it had the force, though if you go if you go back, there were
Right.
3 of them, 2 of them walk away, and then one of them's like, "Hmm, something's different right here," and then shoots up the tree, and then she falls down, so, yeah, I would agree, these were a little bit more menacing. I felt but I do remember, I think I can't remember what video game, but they were definitely tough in one of the video games that I played, so, I think they just might be the, the a level up from the usual battle droids and
Yeah,
B2,
yeah.
super droids.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, when all looked hopeless for Morgan in this situation, she's saved by members of the Mountain Clan. Some really interesting characters in this episode. Um, Also wanted to note that I don't know if I saw this online or they were just colloquially being referred to as the like Day Sisters. Kind of
Oh,
the or not the antagonist, but like the antithesis of the Night Sisters, so to speak. I thought that was kind of a clever naming system. But after she's taken in by them, you see the tattoos on her face slowly begin to fade away, the Night Sister magic wearing off. I thought that was interesting because I didn't really know that that was how that worked. I thought they were,
right.
like, just in her skin. I don't know if
Yeah, I thought
have
there
we
was, like,
s
tattoos. I thought there was, like,
Yeah,
tattoos that that or they were just part of her skin. I didn't know it was part of the magic.
right. Have we seen anything like that before? Like, tattoos fading away?
Mm-mm. Not that I remember, no.
And would it be the same thing for, like a Zabrak species, the same species as Darth Maul? Or
Darth
I don't
Maul,
know how
yeah.
that works. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little shocked by it too, but yeah, it's made sense because we saw it at her obviously in Mandalorian. She didn't have those, so yeah, it kinda makes sense that they're
Right.
not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, but she does keep the little, thing at the widow's peak point of her head. Kind of interesting to note, but, um so yeah, after the Mountain Clan captures her, they're worried that the Separatists will continue to invade their land and, kinda take advantage of the rest of the place and not just after the Night Sisters, and they'll kinda just gonna destroy, the rest of the land and the rest of the planet, and, this is kind of where that, you know, at I guess, leading to the point of anger within Morgan Elsbeth. Um, the first half of episode 1 is that fear, and it's when she loses her clan sisters that that fear begins to turn into anger and wants to seek out that retribution and that, I guess, justice, so to speak, by any means necessary. And so, uh, Morgan goes on a hunt with one of the daughters of the Mountain Clan and sees the Separatist army is still around. She kind of also has this little speech but towards the daughter, like, "We need to fight back," sort of thing, and the daughter's like, "No, no, no, you have to listen to my mother, what she says." Kind of taking that more pacifist stance. But nonetheless, the matron does assure the daughter that they must stay on that path, because after the daughter takes sort of what Morgan has told her, she goes to the mother and says, "Look, I think, we could fight the droid army." She's like, "No, no, no, no." So then Morgan takes the Mountain Clan to her armory, but is met by the droid army shortly thereafter. What did you think of the look of this ship? Kind of like almost bat-like, animal-like,
Ah.
bird-like with the red eyes as well.
Yeah, with the red eyes, and then I know it's holding the droids kind of at the bottom there. It kinda
Hmm.
looked like feet or, like claws coming out of it, so yeah, it was a very purposeful, menacing looking type of, insect animal kind of drooping flying down on them. It was yeah, that's I don't remember seeing that, ship anywhere or that, yeah, that definitely don't remember seeing that ship anywhere, so it was an interesting design and, very effective.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So like the fight ensues thereafter, and ultimately the matron does save them with her powers, but in the process, her daughter does die, and it's almost like this giant "told you so" moment to Morgan Elsbeth, but also kind of like a, you know, like, "This is what you did to my family. Get out of here.
Right.
You're on the dark side path. Like, leave this place," sort of thing. I think she says something to the effect of, "You've already determined your path. You've set
Mhm.
foot on the path you're towards darkness," or whatever. Really a sad scene to see the daughter die. And a side note, by the way, I think this is like one of the few times we've seen like a light side force user who's apparently I would say not a Jedi,
Right.
but has abilities that are somewhat akin to something that a Jedi would use, and definitely seemed like she was very strong in the Force in this scene, the mother did. She also has a quote where she says, "You must not assume just because someone does not want to fight that they are not capable." So
That's
clearly
very
she's
Jedi. That's very
very
Jedi,
Jedi,
actually.
very Jedi. That's like something the old wise wizard says in every single like science fiction or fantasy movie or show you ever watch. There's always some wise sage who you're like, "What's that guy's deal?" And then the climax of the movie comes around and he's like doing kung fu and like destroying people and you're like, "Whoa!" He had the ability all along. Then he busts out a phrase like, "You must not assume just because someone does not want to fight, they are not capable."
Right.
So, yeah, very much kind of that like pacifist who is uh not willing to just roll over and will fight back if necessary, but sadly loses her daughter in the process. And there's this really great ending shot, which obviously sets Morgan off the path of fear onto the path of anger towards revenge for those that killed her clan sisters, where she's just standing in front of the blaze of fire. Any overarching thoughts on episode 1 before we kinda move into episode 2 and our discussion of that?
I mean, I think you nailed it when you were saying, you kind of see that changeover, where it was fear maybe early on, and then it would, developing into this anger eventually.
Mhm,
And really cool, we'll talk about it a little bit later at the ending episode. But the loss of the daughter there, where the matron is kind of carrying her out, we see very similar type of scenery or similar type of scene at the end of episode 6 as well. So just kind of
mm,
that full circle. It's just that the way they did this, they very much purposefully did that, where kind of you began this series with the last shot of the episode 1 and episode 6 kind of showing that parallel as well. So I think that was very cool. And where one, obviously, Morgan Elsbeth is kind of going towards that darker side. Um, you know, not Bear Sophie, but actually the fourth sister, Lynn, maybe going
mhm.
towards the light. So it's just a interesting little parallel there that I noticed.
Yeah, that's a good shout out, I like that. Yeah, I definitely didn't catch that. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a
Yeah.
good point to note as well. Well, yeah, episode 2 starts off, and we're obviously still with Morgan, but it's years later, and she's more or less like a contractor for the Empire, kind of. And the episode opens, and she's giving a speech or pitch rather to all these Imperial officers about her TIE Defender starfighter, which we know from future Star Wars will eventually be part of the story of Star Wars. But we learn that she's kind of the originator of this design model as the successor or the soon to be successor to the original TIE fighter, based on like dual dual engine being less efficient than this TIE Defender proposed model. But ultimately, she is denied by Moff Isden, who kind of strikes you as your typical like Imperial, just I guess to put it nicely, jerk. Just kind of like thank you. Now we'll ravage the planets you told us about and not take your
Right.
designs. Like thank you and be on your way. Um, so I honestly thought the end of this episode we were going to see him again and she's going to like do away with him, but he does not make a reappearance in the story. But where we do end up is the factory base on Corvus, which is rich with raw goods and materials and will be exploited for its resources. That's the planet that, or she tells as part of the plan of this new TIE Defender model, in order to build them because it's going to be super expensive. They'll use the resources on Corvus, which is when Off Isden is like, "Thanks, we'll be there, and we're not going to use your model. See you later."
Yeah.
Which is also where we end up um, in the episode of The Mandalorian. Gosh, I wish I could remember the exact episode. I want to say it's season 2, episode 7, maybe. The first episode where we see Ahsoka and she has the fight with Morgan Elsbeth in the episode. But quite before we get to Corvus, uh, I believe his last name is pronounced Pelion, and I know we have seen him from something else because after we watched our reaction, I watched other people's breakdowns and reviews about it, and like he was being noted by name, and even as we were watching the reaction, both of us were like, "We've seen that guy before. What else was he from?" And to be honest with you, Joey, and maybe anyone listening or watching can remind us, if you happen to know, do you remember off the top of your head what we've seen Pelion in before?
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's just one of those voices, one of those faces that look very familiar, but I could not put my finger on it.
He strikes me as a Rebels character. I
Yeah.
think Gibbo actually might be looking it up right now, so we'll make our way on through and probably come back to Pelion here in about a minute or two. But he's basically praising Morgan's proposal and says a superior sent him looking for talent, who we obviously find out at the end of this episode is Grand Admiral Thrawn. But we don't know that now. We find out later. I actually didn't pick this up at this point in the episode that we were gonna even see. I mean, I knew we were gonna see Thrawn because he was in the trailer, but at this point in the episode, for some reason, it just like wasn't crossing my mind. Um, but nonetheless, that's of course who he is talking about at this point. We do have some information on Pelion, courtesy of Gibbo. Shout out Gibbo. Was a captain in the naval forces of the Galactic Empire, commanding the Imperial Star Destroyer Harbinger as part of the Grand Admiral Allenhei's Third Fleet. Project Stardust. Pelion sided with Grand Admiral Thrawn. So I'm trying to see like where he has appearances. Let's see. Was
Were they
defeated by
actually
the
in the Thrawn books, maybe?
maybe, but I feel like he's someone who we've seen his face
Oh, Shadow
before.
Council. He was part of the
Uh,
Shadow Council in the New Republic.
oh, okay, okay. Interesting. So I knew we had seen him before somewhere, but nonetheless, anyway, so he's someone who we're relatively, maybe not as much as we should be, but relatively familiar with.
Thank God there's no
Um,
trivia episode in 2 weeks.
yeah, yeah, Pelion would be making an appearance on the trivia episode. Morgan then returns to the Corvus settlement of Caledon. Again, that's where she fights Ahsoka in season 2 of The Mandalorian, and is met by many unhappy villagers when she tells them the Empire just wants to exploit their resources. And of course, the villagers just get resentful of her, as they probably should. And they even, I think, call her a witch at one point in this scene. Um, and this, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, this guy here at the front is, I don't know if he's noted by name in the credits or not. I want to say he was referred to by name in
Oh,
this point.
Wing. I think that's the name.
Wing,
The name that
Wing.
he's given. Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like the unofficial leader of the people of Calanon, or Caladan, I believe is how it's pronounced. Um, and so I assume he's kind of the one who Morgan Elsbeth sort of like asserted dominion over when she first got there. And he's also the one who's kind of like the spokesperson, more or less, or the representative of the people of Caledon. So Morgan fights against a mysterious foe, which we quickly find out is that Rook, and of course it
Yeah.
was Rook from Rebels. And speaking of Rebels, by the way, Gibbo also coming in clutch here. Um, Pelion did appear in Star Wars Rebels. But apparently it was only one appearance, and then he was in another episode just with voice only. So a little more information on Pelion there. Nice. He did strike me as like a Rebels character when I saw him. I was
Yeah, he
like,
sure did. Yeah.
I think that's what I've seen him from. But yeah, speaking of Rebels characters, Rook is an assassin in the show Rebels, and so he made another appearance in the first time we've seen him outside of anything besides Star Wars Rebels. That was cool. And but as a part of this fight with Rook, Morgan defeats him and, has him at spear point or whatever you want to call it. Finds out that the entire fight was just a test set up by Pelion, who is, of course, being instructed by Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn and Morgan ensue in this conversation afterwards. It's basically like Thrawn saying, "You've passed my tests. Your recruitment ends here. You are now kind of an agent of the Empire." And he has this quote where he says, "The Empire's willingness to trade lives for profits will build a disillusioned army." And so this is a great scene with Thrawn. Honestly, probably my favorite part of episode 2, because it's a great insight into the kind of the tactician that Thrawn is. He's not your typical Empire person who's like, "We're just going to do what it takes to win, whatever the cost. If we lose millions of lives." Like he
Hmm.
understands that the downside of doing something like that is that you lose the morale, you create disillusioned people when you're so willing to sacrifice them. So he's a pretty smart guy, and I appreciated this scene. I think it really speaks to kind of the true nature of the character of Thrawn. And man, didn't he look great in
Yeah,
animated
and
animation
I
again?
even said I mentioned it in the reaction is that as much as it was cool to see him in live action, animated Thrawn is the best. So,
I think so too.
I think it's just the blue comes out a certain way, the eyes, and
Hmm.
he just looks so much more menacing. The voice, I mean, I know it's probably the same actor, but just seems more full,
Right.
and to your point, the way he's such a good, like strategy wise, he understands not only what is in front of him, but what that means going down the line, with the disillusionment and just having a weaker army overall, and he pretty much calls it, So I think that's the greatness that is Thrawn, and I mean, I read I need to read because I think there are like 6 books in total for Thrawn. I've only read the first 3, so I need to go back and read those because those are really good.
Do a we review all 6 books in one
Oh my
episode at
gosh,
some point.
all 6.
That'd be wild. Um, in the episode, Morgan Elsbeth says that she seeks the power to destroy her enemies, adding that her power gives her strength. She also offers this strength to the Empire, and Thrawn, of course, accepts the offer, which is it's cool to see that this was the origin of how we inevitably end up seeing them in Ahsoka season 1. So it kind of felt like a cool precursor to Ahsoka, but at the same time, and we can talk about this maybe a little bit with the episode 3 discussion as well. I didn't feel like with that Morgan's story did anything that I wasn't expecting. It kind of just
Right. Hmm.
happened how I was expecting it to happen. It was
Right.
cool to see Grievous. It was cool to see Thrawn. Episode 3 was, I probably would say episode 3 was my least favorite personally.
Hmm.
Um, but nonetheless, it kind of just occurred as I was expecting, I would say. And so after the path of anger, we move into episode 3, the path of hate, the culmination of her story, where Nadura returns to Corvus or Caledon, the settlement on Corvus. She was originally one of these townspeople who had kind of felt disillusioned, and so this is much in the future during the New Republic era, and she is now an ambassador of the New Republic. This character Nadira, so she arrives, and meanwhile, everyone here on Corvus in this town of settlement of Caledon is completely unaware that the Empire has fallen. So we are post Empire. Palpy is no longer around, and all these people are like just thinking the Empire is still in charge. So she arrives, tells them that this isn't the case, and proceeds to offer to make Corvus a member of the of a world of the New Republic, as long on the kind of the point that Elsbeth resigns and relinquishes control of the planet. Of course, this is not something she's going to want to do. Is now fully on the path of hate, being consumed more or less by the dark side, and orders her guards to kill the New Republic guards who are with Nadira, including Nadira, as she orders the R8 unit on her ship. This is Nadira, of course, who's ordering the R8 unit on the ship to send this distress signal. Which ultimately there was a part in this episode which you caught, I think, accurately, and we'll talk about here in a second. But Nadira's ship ultimately explodes because Elsbeth's guards shot these little, homing things that cause the explosion after a few seconds. She's severely injured in the explosion and barely clinging to life at this point. Meanwhile, Elsbeth is burning the entire surrounding trees and telling the villagers that this is for their protection. Joey, this was the one part of the episode where I was watching it with you and I was like, "What? Why? Why are we burning? Is it like if I can't have it, no one can have it sort of thing? Like what's
Right.
going on here with the tree burning? Did you understand this part?"
I went when I went back and watched this episode again, and I was really trying to understand this piece too. I don't. Yeah, it seemed like it was that just that if we can't have it, we don't want anyone to have it. And with the doom of maybe the New Republic coming in, and taking over the planet like Nadura had wanted. I think that's kind of the play that she was going at, but I mean, it doesn't help the settlement at all if all your resources are gone. So it was a confusing little moment there. Maybe it was just like one of those super villainy type of moments
Yeah,
where it just doesn't make sense to even rationalize. You just see that they're just wildly out of control.
I'm a bad guy and I'm gonna set things on fire.
Fire.
Yeah, I honestly don't really understand the decision to set the trees ablaze, but again, if you have a explanation or theory on that, let us know. But the episode ends right after that as as the character of Nadira is sort of clinging to life, and ultimately she doesn't make it, but she drops the thing that which she was able to send, sort of this homing beacon. And you hear this voice on the comm, which of course was in Nadira's possession before she passed. And you called it as we were watching it. You're like, that sounded like Bo Katan. And I need to listen to it more closely. But it turns out, as evidenced by the show credits, this is the voice of Bo Katan, which was pretty cool. I was like, wow, that's a nice little sneaky little Easter egg tie-in right there. A fun ending. And in addition to that, that final part, another cool ending shot that we got at the end of the episode to kind of cap off both the first and third episodes of the Morgan Elsbeth um, portion of Tales of the Empire with these
Yeah, and with those
flaming
ending
trees.
shots, both her walking away from fire or sitting in the middle of fire. Episode 1 was much more, of a fear. She was like scared, and where in this one you could actually see seething the hatred, and so the evolution of this path, you could actually see it in her face.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely. For those watching the video version of the podcast, I mean, you can see it right there. She's like, "This is who I am. No regrets."
No
Yep,
regrets. Not even
fully on the
one.
path. Not even one. Fully on the path of the dark side. Yeah, I mean, we'll do some more comparing um of Morgan Elsbeth's story with Barasafi's story probably towards the end of the podcast today. But did you have anything else about Morgan's story before we kind of move into our Barasafi discussion?
I think, like you said, it kind of was. This was kind of an expected storyline, that where we knew that we saw where she was on the Mandalorian. We knew the end game here. So just to get from point A to point C was a pretty linear line.
Yeah.
And what we're going to see a little bit different is the story of Barasafi.
Right. I think a lot of people, myself definitely included, expected Barris's story. I mean, I expected both stories to be like linearly towards the dark side, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And while that was true of Morgan Elsbeth's story, it wasn't really true of Barris's. And I saw a lot of people kind of like hating on this online that she and had a like a light side ending. And I was like, I mean,
Who
if
did?
it's good, I mean, there are plenty of people on YouTube who were like, "Oh, I wanted her to like be like evil, and her and Ahsoka to be like,
Oh, gotcha, gotcha,
fighting in the new movie, the new season of Ahsoka."
gotcha. Right.
Like, there were just a lot, like a large contingent of people who were like really wanting her to be like this new evil force during the
Hmm.
New Republic era, and obviously, we know that's not how her character turns out. Now that we know, so that was a little bit surprising, but I mean, it's the same thing with Tales of the Jedi. Is it a good movie? Probably not. But I would say it's the most unique by far of the sequels because it tries to be different. And so I actually did like the Barasafi stories. Um, and I think the reason is that it tried to be different. It wasn't what I expected. And I think
Mm,
anytime something is what I don't, something is not what I expect it to be, I think I'm more inclined to be appreciative of the storytelling because it genuinely surprised me.
fair, yeah.
Um, so having said all of that, episode 4 opens up. We pick back up with Barriss where we left off with her in the Clone Wars, where she's just attempted to bomb the Jedi Temple. She's in prison. She's visited by the fourth sister, who we learned her name is Lynn, previous to her joining the Inquisitors. We also get the vibe that Lynn like, used to be a Jedi Council member, or at the very least
Mhm.
was informing the Jedi Council on a frequent basis. But Lynn tells Barriss that the Jedi have attempted to assassinate Palpatine, and also presenting Barriss with an opportunity with which she accepts. This opportunity, of course, to be an Inquisitor, as Lynn has probably recently taken this same opportunity. So then Lynn and Barriss land on a planet and into the station with Dante and Amar, meeting the Grand Inquisitor. There's these three prospective Inquisitors, if you will, Dante and Amar being the other two, along with Barriss. And the quote that's given by, I believe, the Grand Inquisitor in this scene, who we see and Barriss gets to meet for the first time. Or actually, she's probably met this Grand Inquisitor before, just before he was the Grand Inquisitor, probably back when he was a Jedi Temple guard.
Right.
If you think about it, but
Yeah,
anyways,
that's true. I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
yeah. But he says that the Emperor's vision must be protected, and these three must prove themselves worthy. And so ultimately, this is going to be more or less like a fight to the death to determine who gets this Inquisitor spot. So Amar, one of the two others, is like, "The heck with this! I'm not sticking around for this. I'm leaving." And then the next scene, where you find out he's had a quote unquote terrible accident, and he
Mhm.
has this,
Mhm.
like, I think it's a blue stone that's like part of his species, like, facial structure or whatever. The Grand Inquisitor, like, tosses the stone over onto the ground as he
That was
says this.
kind of that's kind of
Yeah,
brutal, man.
yeah. Terrible accident. Amar's not coming back. You're like, "Oh, okay. Now I understand." Um, so the rest of the testing is really the Grand Inquisitor testing Barriss, and this other character of Dante, and ultimately it comes down to testing them against each other. But just prior to that, um, he actually kind of has this fight with her, and so as part of his testing of her, um, he's testing her by telling her to strike him down, similar a lot of the times to what we see Sith masters tell people. They're kind of coercing, like you see with Palpatine and Return of the Jedi trying to do with Luke. And so when she questions her power, she gets angry and more powerful. And you really see for the first time, like, this power that Barriss possesses within her. The Inquisitor even is like knocked back, and I think he has a bloody lip or nose in that scene as well. So yeah, it's a really powerful scene because you're like, oh, Barriss is like more powerful, I think, than we thought she might be, which sort of sets up the rest of her story as well. So then there's this final test where she and Dante are pitted against one another in a Fortnite style shrinking zone. It's a battle royale, battle to the death between Barriss and Dante in this
Did
ring
you
with
not think that right away? That was the first thing I thought of when I saw the zone, like, it making it smaller and smaller.
the thought definitely crossed my mind, yes.
I
um
play too many video games.
she has this really dark moment though in this scene where, the fight goes on, you can tell she's holding back a little bit. And she, like, picks him up by force choking him, something that we really haven't seen too many characters do outside of Vader. And at this moment, you're like, "Oh, shoot, she can do that."
Right.
And, like, tosses him over, and he falls to his death, that we can presume. And so Barriss is presented this Inquisitor helmet from the fourth sister, who was the one who got her out of prison, at the beginning of the episode. And so uh, Barriss, along with the fourth sister and the other two Inquisitors in this scene. One of them is definitely the Inquisitor that we see Ahsoka kill at the end of her last episode of Tales of the Jedi. And then the other Inquisitor, I want to say, is Marok. I don't know that for sure. The
Mhm.
character that we saw in the Ahsoka show. Um, so if that is the case, getting to see a bunch of characters who we're familiar with in different contexts again was kind of fun. But of course, they're presented to their new master, who is none other than Darth Vader, someone who was, like, used in the trailers and the marketing for this show, and then was in the show for about 15 seconds, um,
Generously.
but generously, yeah. But a pretty cool story, and something I noted during this part was, like, it's funny that she is the person who, like, framed Darth Vader, Anakin's former apprentice. So, like, what are the feelings that Anakin has in this moment looking at Barriss, someone he obviously knows, someone he knows bombed the Jedi Temple, and now he's like they're both on the dark side, and he's her master. It's gotta be, like, kind of a weird environment,
Right.
weird feeling.
You ever, like it reminds me of when, if you, like, move jobs and then somebody you used to work with comes over to the job that you went to, and you're like, "Oh my god," like, "We used to work together," like, that,
Yeah.
what is that from the Thor movie with the Hulk? Like, "Oh, yeah,
Oh,
we worked
yeah.
together." It
Yeah.
just kinda reminded me of that. Maybe not as jovial, with Darth Vader, probably not, but, I think that thought absolutely crosses his mind. I always wondered, because obviously Anakin, this could be a whole other episode. Anakin and Vader, I mean, yes, they are the same person, but I wondered, like, the thoughts, how different they are from, the Anakin we knew in the first couple of episodes of the prequel, and then
Right.
obviously, like, at the end, and then going into the original trilogy, and just the way his thought processes were,
Mhm.
just how different they have to be because, in one time, he was on the light side, now he's very, very much on the dark side, so maybe does he even recognize her? Things like that. I wonder if it's just he's just such a different person, a different entity that maybe he doesn't even register that this is the same Jedi that did that to Ahsoka to him earlier on.
Right, yeah, to what extent does he, like, still suppress Anakin versus how much of Anakin is let through in his thinking, sort of, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting, I'm sure there's people out there who'd be like, "Well, uh
Right.
if you read, comic number 131 from 2015, you'll learn that blah, blah," you know? I'm sorry I haven't read all the Darth Vader comics, I would love to someday,
Yeah.
I plan to.
Well, let us know if you actually do know that.
Yeah,
Right in the
yeah.
comments.
Well, we're, like, basically an hour in. We've still got 2 more episodes to talk about. Let's zip through these and we'll wrap up our discussion after that. Episode 5, titled Realization. I don't know if I noted that episode 4 was titled Devoted. So kind of a different, nomenclature structure for the Barris episodes um, than the Morgan Elsbeth episodes, but episode 5 opens up with both Barris and the fourth sister Lynn on a mission together to find a Jedi who is working within a local rebel cell. Um, and I think this is the moment in the Barris episodes where I was like, oh, they're not really taking this the direction I thought. Like, there's so much
Mhm.
indecision and doubt in the way that she's
Right.
acting. Was that surprising to you too?
I'm gonna admit, because of the title of the episode, I'm like, this is going to end up her realizing actually that this isn't gonna be for her. So the
Mhm.
title spoiled it a little bit for me.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I saw the title and I was like, maybe the realization that she is an inquisitor? I don't know, I almost was
Right.
taking it the other way, but I think it makes total sense in the way that it's used. So yeah, there's kind of this scene where Lynn is like, "Quit." I don't know what she says, but effectively she's like, "Quit," saying stuff like, "Quit doubting yourself, like you're an inquisitor," blah blah blah, stuff like that. So they land down in this village. Ferris questions how the emperor is going to allow this to happen to this town because Barris is of the mind that they're bringing order to eventually provide prosperity, whereas the empire really most of the time is bringing order for the sake of it and doing away with people in the process because that's not what's important. What's important is the empire, and if anyone gets in the way, too bad. So it's kind of like Barris understands the means of the empire, but doesn't see the end that makes sense in her eyes. Um, and so I think that's where a lot of that friction, morally starts to kind of take place. But the fourth sister asks the town elder about the Jedi hiding in their town, while Barris is sort of finding out from this kid that the Jedi might be in the mountains. And you can see the stark contrast in approaches. The fourth sister is like, "Tell me, I know they're here. Tell me." Like she's very, very interrogating. Whereas Barris is like oddly sweet for an inquisitor. She's like, "Hey, it's
Hey, buddy.
okay. You could tell me." And if you didn't know in the first 3 minutes of this episode that her path was gonna go more towards the light side, I feel like you definitely knew at this point where it's like, this is someone who's supposed to be, like, using the dark side, and she's being very friendly with a child and getting the information she needs by just basically, like, smiling and, like, comforting someone. You're like, this person is using the dark side? What? Who are we talking about here? But the child does tell her that the Jedi are hiding in the mountains. So ultimately, her methods do work better than the fourth sister's. But the fourth sister, even with the information obtained, decides that because the townspeople lied, particularly this sort of village leader, that she's just going to kill everyone in the town except for the child, which was I mean, they didn't really show a lot, but at the same time,
Right.
it was like on
Pretty
screen,
evident.
but it wasn't. Yeah, it was evident, and it was heavily implied that it was just like, oh my gosh, like no regard for life in this scene. Kind of like a little bit, not more than a little bit, like very dark in some sense. And so, um, kind of meanwhile, in this entire time when she's doing this, this child is clinging to Barris, like as if to say, "Please don't hurt me. Please don't let her hurt me." Uh, and this was another moment where it's like, where are we headed right now? Like Barris and the fourth
Yeah.
sister are going to fight each other in this episode, and that's ultimately where it does end up. And so, Barris shows compassion for this boy who has lost everything, and ultimately he's like one of the only survivors of this town. And so, with the information obtained, Barris is still an inquisitor at this point, although she has probably a lot of regrets. Um, but she and the fourth sister begin climbing the mountain, and Barris finds the fourth sister upon summoning the mountain, battling this Jedi who they've been looking for. The Jedi then bests the fourth sister. When he goes for the final blow, Barris saves her, and this is the moment where it was like, how is this fight between Barris and the Jedi gonna end? It was a lot of, dialogue, a lot of trying to talk down the Jedi, like, "I can help you. Just put your saber down. Like, look what they did
Hmm.
for me," sort of thing. And Barris convinces the Jedi to go with her. Then the fourth sister this felt, like, very telegraphed. I feel
Yeah,
like
sure. You
I
called it, I
definitely
think.
yeah, I definitely saw it coming. I was like, you could see the Jedi sort like slowly wearing down like his defenses. Like, okay, I guess I'll try. Like, I'm willing to talk about this. I'm gonna put down my weapon. As soon as he does it, fourth sister stabs him in the back. I was like, oh, okay, saw that coming. Uh, but he is still alive at this point. Or no, sorry, the fourth sister is still alive.
Oh
Actually,
well.
who we ref-
Yeah, he is.
y-
Um, yeah, Barris actually goes to him and
right, right,
determines
right.
that they're still alive.
Yes. And the fourth sister just wants to obviously leave the Jedi there to die. And this is the point where Rye Chase, by the way, shout out to Gibbo for the name of the Jedi in this scene. Rye Chase, uh, you know, is laying there dying. Barris is like, we can't let the Jedi die. And she has this. Barris has this great line too. She's like, "You have one Jedi left to deal with," and this is the moment where you're like, "Oh, they're coming to blows." And she literally just force pushes her off the mountain, and you're like, "Oh, oh, wait, what? Like, is Lynn alive? What's happening right now?" It was a moment where I honestly thought they were gonna probably fight for a little bit longer, but it happened, and I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
dang, okay, yeah, that just happened." And then Barris in the next and final scene of the episode says, "I won't let you die. You're not alone." And so there's this very symbolic casting off of her helmet in that process as well. So yeah, I mean, really, this is the episode I think that surprised me the most because it took us on that journey of, it kind of felt like the first episode was setting us up to have the second episode be the episode where like Barris's character really starts to like journey more into that, I guess, path of anger, so to speak, if we're looking at the Morgan Elsbeth episodes. But it's the opposite. Like it's the shedding of the weight of needing to be an inquisitor. And what I would really be interested in is seeing Barris's story between episode 5 and episode 6. Like
Hmm.
that to me is interesting. I would love if we get some supplementary, if it's a book or something. I feel like I wanna know about the inner turmoil of Barriss more. Like, this is someone who blew up the Jedi Temple, and you're telling me now she's, like, somehow journeying towards the light side. Not saying that it can't happen, just that I would love to know more about it.
Hmm.
Um, I wanna explore that story more. It feels like it's very deserving of more storytelling, but
Yeah,
None
I think
yeah.
by design, she is a light side user, not a Jedi, not a Jedi,
Mhm,
because there's a lot of implications when you put that name to it. So I think that's where she lays on the spectrum.
mhm,
Obviously, with the offer that Lynn had given her in the prison cell there, which wasn't really an offer. I mean, it was really just like you're coming with us, and it doesn't even matter. That. So I think that is the reality of it. She was pulled into this world. Maybe it wasn't, but it was her only option because it seemed like it was either that or death.
true.
So I think with this episode especially, we as her, she does as also realizes that this is not who she is.
Mm,
Even when they landed, she was questioning the emperor. How could this happen? How could this be under the emperor's rule? How are these people living like this? And to have that, and then to see how the fourth sister reacted, and in killing all the townspeople, closer and actually, no, I'm sorry, more further and further away of what the inquisitors and the emperor, what their values are. She saw herself completely on the other side, maybe realizing, okay, I'm not on this side, I'm on the light side, that's where I need to be. And especially at the end, obviously, with her essentially choosing the Jedi over Lynn, over the fourth sister. So, um, yeah, I thought this was a great episode, and just things like the things that she says, like, I won't let you die. You're not alone. These are very, light-sided, coded types of words. That we will be in this together. Much more of a together type of feel. So to have seen that, to have her literally realize it all in this episode, I thought it was actually really great. And to your point, yeah, from anything from episode 5 to 6, I think we saw a little bit of it going at the end of this episode. Obviously, this Jedi is hurt. He's going to be needed to be healed. Perfect way to segue into this next episode, as she is called the healer.
yeah. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting part of the last episode too, that she was referred to kind of in this motherly way, and the healer. I mean, you really see a change in who she is. Like I said, I would love to see some more stuff on what happens between episodes 5 and 6, but episode 6 is called The Way Out. I thought this was I mean, I loved the first Barris episode a lot too. And the second Barris episode was really impactful in terms of the direction of the character, but I think the last Barris episode was probably my favorite of the bunch, if I had to pick one. This episode was titled "The Way Out," and I think it was more so just because I really am drawn towards, characters who kind of have that sage-like wisdom, and it really felt like Barris has that or has achieved that in this episode. And also kind of the path of Lynn too. Like, I really enjoy seeing characters make transformational changes that you don't often expect to. So, episode 6 opens up with a family walking through the snowstorm, looking for the healer, as we know in the first bits of the episode. Later, obviously, we know that's Barris. But I think I spent the first 2 minutes of this episode thinking like, who are these people and who's the healer and who is this
Right.
who is this aardvark, not aardvark, whatever animal he is leading them
like
through the snow?
like a sloth.
Sloth, hedgehog looking, yeah, yeah, something like that. But this is kinda how the first, 2 or 3 minutes of the episode is. We don't really see anyone we recognizably know for that first 2 minutes or so. And then we see that Barriss Offee in this next scene is this healer they've been referring to. And doesn't find anything wrong with the child who this family is bringing. Clearly, this child has the capabilities, at least, of being a force sensitive child, or if we're using Bad Batch lingo, an high M count child.
Hmm.
But the Empire has tested the child, whose name is Micah, and thought that there was something wrong with the child, and so Um, clearly, like, there is this heavy implication that the child has the ability to be force sensitive, and this is even kind of like reiterated later when Barriss is like, Micah's the kind of child that the Jedi would have taken into the Jedi Temple if we were still during the age of the Republic, and kind of shares her personal story with the Jedi and part of her past with the family in this scene too. And then shortly thereafter, someone is coming. During this scene, I noted that there was like the shadow of footsteps outside the tent right before this other
Mhm.
character peeked into the tent, and I was like, "Ooh, what's about to happen?" By the way, did we get the name of this other character in this episode at any point?
I didn't see it, this or the sloth-looking beaver, helper. Yeah, I don't think we got the names of either of these 2 staff members.
I'm
It's
wondering if
like
they're
it's
in.
like their secretary, essentially, for the healer.
Yeah, yeah. Gibbo said he's on it. Nice. Yeah, yeah. The woman in the parka kind of feels like the assistant to the regional manager, and I don't know what that makes the sloth badger guy. Probably
Probably
like
Pam from The Office.
Pam. Yeah, Pam. Something like that. That'd be a fun episode, like comparing Star Wars characters to their office counterparts.
We can make it happen.
Uh, yeah. Barris tells her staff, these 2 others, to take the family, to someone who will know what to do. I kind of thought that she was referring to Ahsoka in this scene. I think in the episode, she actually may even call the person an old friend.
Mhm.
Um, And so that's an interesting way or an interesting, like, conclusion
Yeah,
to her path. Like, this is the person who you framed for killing like,
right,
potentially killing hundreds of people, blowing up the Jedi Temple, and now it's, like, someone you trust to send people to who have a Force-sensitive child. It's just
right.
funny, like, how things come around like that and how different things were af
We choose to remember what we wanna remember.
Yeah, yeah. And there's obviously this other great line right then when the father of the family says, "What can we do to repay you?" And Barris simply says, "Live." Um, Great moment in the episode.
Which
And
you
so
called also,
now,
by the way.
yeah, it just kind of felt like it was what was going to come out of her
Right.
mouth next. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. This person approaching from the horizon line, we now learn is Lynn, who is someone Barris has been avoiding, um, like the Grand Inquisitor avoided her in the first meeting, to give the family sort of this bit of a head start here. So the 2 sort of assistants to Barris take the family. Lynn is approaching. Barris meets her out kind of in this open tundra area. Barris says to her, "You know not the path, and if you go in, you will not come out." Sort of referencing like if you follow them. Which also, did you think it was interesting how Lynn was like, "I'm coming back for you, but not now, because I'm tracking the Jedi
Yeah,
child." I was like,
right.
okay, I guess, like, whatever. I just thought it was, like, a little bit odd how she didn't go after Barris, and Barris was just like, "If you go in, you won't come out, but here you go,
Right.
here's the path."
Well, I think it wasn't without trying. I mean, she was trying to strike her, but she kept, doing the Grand Inquisitor kind of
Yeah,
moves where she was just kind of just literally stepping aside and all this. So maybe she's like, I'll get back to you. I need to get this
yeah,
kid who probably doesn't have the same skills as you do.
right. "You're wasting my time, I'm gonna do something I know I'm more likely to accomplish."
Right.
Um, and there's this kind of it all comes back to sort of the the kind of the slogan of the Sith, like, "Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering." There's this reoccurring theme of fear, especially in this episode and the first Barris episode. And the fourth sister even says in this moment, "Fear is my ally, not yours." And it really like gets. I think I noted this. Maybe I can't remember if it was during the episode or after, but I was like, "Man, the first episode, it really felt like the fourth sister was this superior fighter,
Hmm.
older, almost wiser person than Barris." And now here we are, like, I don't know, 20, 30 years later, however long it's been, and Barris feels so much older and wiser
Hmm.
than
Yep.
and Lynn, the fourth sister, almost feels, like, a little bit childish. She's like, "Here's my ally, not yours." Like, she needs to
Right.
hold
Yeah.
on to that in order to, you know but anyway, she proceeds into the cave, and the fourth sister then gets lost while the family is able to escape, in the process, and almost it felt like this cave was imbued with the force somehow. Like it was almost like collapsing in on itself, like allowing her to get lost, allowing the family to escape. And then she then panics as Barris tells her to lay down her weapon, and she'll help get her out. This is kind of met initially with like just anger and continuing to just Kylo Ren the walls over and over again, and you know, as if that's going to do anything. But um,
Kylo Ren. Nice.
yeah, do you like that? um, the fourth sister eventually, after some discussion back and forth with Barris, it kind of feels like Barris is sort of slowly starting to chip away at her, maybe a little bit, but the
Mhm.
fourth sister really still isn't having it. Finally, she's like, slicing stuff, and you hear like the saber make contact with something, and both you and I were like, "What? Did she just?" And then the camera pans, and she has stabbed Barris through the abdomen, and I thought that was hilarious what you said as we were watching. You were like, "Well, it doesn't mean anything, and she's not gonna die." You know, all these characters getting stabbed in the abdomen, but hey, they can make it. You never know. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon sits over in being being one with the Force, and he's like, "You've got to be
Like
kidding me." But yeah, the fourth sister, sees Barris, impales her with her lightsaber, really on accident. It seems like, at least that's the way it was shown in the episode. In order to get out, she must choose the right path, and tells Barris, "I'm going to get you out of here." So this is the moment where it's like, okay, the fourth sister is choosing a different path. Like she is going to help Barris, and even more importantly, and very symbolically, leaves her lightsaber, her Inquisitor lightsaber, in the cave. And at this point, I was like, okay, we've probably got less than 5 minutes left as she's walking out of the cave. And there's this wonderful scene where Lynn is carrying Barris out of the cave. And you're like, where are we about to go next? I'm ready to see how this story ends. And then the episode ends. I was like, oh, we don't even get to see like what happens to Barris. Like it's heavily
Right,
implied
right.
she lives at the same time. It's like, dang, I
Yeah,
would have loved just 2 or 3 more minutes, another meaningful conversation between the two of them.
right.
But nonetheless, that's how it all kind of concludes. It's taken us, gosh, like probably almost an hour just talking about Tales of the Empire to get through all 6 of these episodes. I just want to ask you real quickly, looking back at both the Barris and Morgan episodes, what was A, your favorite part? And B, if you had to change anything about them, what would it be?
Wow. I mean, my favorite part, well, of the two, and we'll get to this in a second, was the bear story. I really did enjoy seeing her kind of twist and turn into this person at the end of kind of fully being on the light side. I mean, she's called a healer. That's like in these role playing games, these RPGs. The healer is very important. Important character. So I think that scene actually, the scene where she kind of, because there's no way, Ben, there's no way that she didn't see that coming. I think that was a sacrifice for Lynn to go to the light side. So I think because that's what ended up happening. That was her plan the entire time. Apparently, she has watched some Star Wars Disney Plus shows where if you get hit in the abdomen, you're good. So make sure that that's available. Um, so I think I think that scene actually in itself was actually my favorite because she knew what it would take. She sacrificed herself. I mean, all joking aside, yeah, maybe this is the end of her. She even kind of alluded to that when she was talking to the family, saying goodbye to the family. And to her staff, the assistant to the regional manager guy, and just like this may be the end. Don't come back for me. So it reminds me of like an Obi-Wan. It reminds me of, and the way she was calling Lynn, she was calling her Lynn. She kept saying, "Don't call me that. Call me that." Reminds me of the Luke and Kylo
Mhm.
battle in
Yeah.
Last Jedi. It's like, "Don't call me Ben. This is not my Ben." Whatever. So I think just those parallels, and you've even mentioned it where she's that kind of that wise sage at the end. Just to see that was probably my favorite. Something I would change. Um, I'm not sure if there is much I would change. I mean, although the Morgan story maybe not, out of the two was my, my lesser favorite of the two. Um, I guess the inclusion of the Vader and the Grievous just seemed cheap again. It just seemed like I understand in Vader sense, it makes more sense because the
Mhm.
Inquisitors are kind of working for him, so that makes a little more sense. The Grievous one, I don't know. Like it was cool to see him, but it was very much like, okay, here he comes, slicing through everybody, and just disappears. And again,
Yeah,
makes sense for the time, but it just seemed kind of cheap.
yeah. Like, the creators were like, "Who's a cool Clone Wars character who could wipe out the Night Sisters?" Got it, Grievous. It would've been cool to see Dooku too in that scene, I will
That would
say,
have been
if they
cool.
could've
Yeah, yeah.
swapped someone out, but, yeah, I would maybe I would probably even say the same thing, in terms of if anything could be changed. I think actually to say just for the sake of saying something a little bit different, I will probably say just, like, more unexpectedness with Morgan
Sure.
Elsbeth's story. Like, it happened pretty much as we thought it was going to. There wasn't anything groundbreaking that we learned about her that we probably couldn't have already inferred. So it was I guess it was cool to see her story, but at the same time, it was like, you know, nothing happened that was unexpected. And so
Right.
I guess I just wish there would have been like some little twist they would have thrown in there with Morgan, that would have thrown us off there. But yeah, I think I mean, we can kind of just go ahead and shift into our final gradings of the episode. Having said that, um, I definitely enjoyed both. I going into it, I was more excited about the Barris episodes. Um, the Morgan Elsbeth episodes were pretty much what I thought they were gonna be. The Barris episodes were definitely not, particularly the 5th and 6th episode. Um, but having said that, like mentioned earlier, I love the unexpectedness that shows and that TV shows and movies can oftentimes bring. I think it adds to a more interesting plot for me personally. And so for that reason, I'm gonna go with a slightly higher rating of the Barris Offee episodes with an 8.5. Um, and then an 8 out of 10 for the Morgan Elsbeth episodes. Um, Morgan Elsbeth episodes, again, didn't feel like anything crazy. That's why I'm going 8 out of 10.
Mm,
Barris Offee episodes, I think I loved the unexpectedness of it, but I still feel a little bit confused about like, the the change in morality of right and wrong and good and evil felt very abrupt because we only got 3 very short episodes, and the most previous, recent thing we'd seen her doing was, like, trying to kill a bunch of Jedi. It was
right.
like,
Yeah.
how did we it felt, like, so abrupt how we went from that. So, um, just from a storytelling perspective, I still did like the Barris episodes more, but I'd love to learn more about her, story in the future, particularly between episodes 5 and 6. So, for me, 8 for the Elsbeth episodes, 8.5 for the Barris episodes. How about you?
I'm gonna stick with your grade of 8 for the Morgan episodes, and I'm actually going a little higher. I'm gonna go 9 on the Bear Offee
Mhm.
episodes. Just for everything you said with the Morgan episodes, very linear, very predictable, almost very enjoyable still because we got to learn the stories of her origins, her motivations, and I mean, let's be honest, the titles of those 3 episodes, pretty cool, So I think the way that they did it was really smart and, but again, very predictable. You have this idea of like, where things were going to end up anyway. With the Bears Offie episodes, though, like you said, it was kind of a roller coaster, a little bit more zigging and zagging that we weren't really expecting. But what I took away from this is that I need more Bears Offie. Like that's not necessarily what I needed, what happened at the end of the Morgan episodes. I'm actually perfectly fine of how everything turned out and like, okay, this makes sense and now we see her in Mandalorian. But with the Bears Offie episodes, we know that we know that Lynn's around. We know that Bears Offie probably lives. What happens with that family with a child and there's a lot more that could expand upon this particular story. So that's why I gave it, a full point above the Morgan episodes because you and we always loved the lore. If you could expand on the lore, that's one of the best things you could do for Star Wars, and I really think that it did in this case.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we get more Barris in the near future. I feel like just the fact that they changed or not changed, but like, you know, explained her story in a way that kind of people didn't see coming, I feel like merits more in-depth storytelling personally. So I don't know. Let us know down in the comments. What did you think about the Morgan Elsbeth episodes? What did you think about the Barris Offee episodes? Which set did you like more? And what would you grade each one out of 10? Again, let us know down in the comments of the video version of the podcast or on any of our socials or via our email if you're an audio listener. And moving into our viewer question that we teased at the beginning of today's episode, what Tales stories would you be interested in seeing in the future? Would you like to see next? Tales of the Ewoks, Tales of the Gungans. What are we feeling here? Let us know your thoughts on that in the comments and everywhere else. You're able to get a hold of us as well. Again, that'll be this week's community tab poll, as well as the poll over on Twitter. Be on the lookout for both of those and vote in them as well. Tales of Balin, Gibbo says. I would love Tales of Balin and Shin. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Tales of I don't know, Tales of whatever. I think they can call it whatever they want. Just give me 3 episodes of Balin and 3 episodes of Shin. That'd be so cool. But yeah, let us know what you're most interested in seeing next for Tales shows down in the comments below. And as we mentioned at the top of today's podcast, this is normally the segment where we'd say what we're covering in next week's episode. But next week's episode is a break. So we will be back in 2 weeks' time with the topic of the episode TBD. So be on the lookout for that. But again, no Hoth Hangout episode next week. We will return on the, what would that be? The 23rd of May will be the release of the next episode after the release of the May 9th episode. That will be episode 81. And then I believe let's see, episode 83, I think will be our first breakdown. No, episode 82 will
84,
be our
84.
84 will be our first I'm trying to like do math right now with dates and it's not working.
Yeah,
Uh
I got it right
we'll
here, 84.
we'll be breaking down the Acolyte in episode 84. So stay tuned for that. Lots of exciting times with the release of that coming soon. And looking forward to covering all of it here on the Hoth Hangout channel with all of you. Appreciate y'all for being here and for listening. Want to say a quick thank you to all those of you who are subscribed over on YouTube to the Hoth Hangout channel there. Thank you to the 420 of you who are YouTube subscribers. You can check out all of our latest reactions to the newest and latest Star Wars shows over on YouTube, as well as the video version of every podcast. If you're interested in contacting us, reach out to us via email at hothangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars related thoughts, questions, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. Additionally, the Hoth Hangout podcast is findable wherever you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We would appreciate it very much. And it also does allow other folks who love Star Wars to be able to find the podcast more easily. You can find us on the socials, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X. We're findable at Hoth Hangout on all of those platforms. The Hoth Hangout community Discord server link is available down in the show notes of today's episode. Check it out, join the Discord, and find a community full of like-minded Star Wars fans over there. Again, the link for the Hoth Hangout community Discord server down in the show notes below. Joey, we've covered a lot of Tales of the Empire today. We've gone officially a half an hour over how long we wanted to go. We're still here. We're still going. How you feeling about the future of any of the Tales shows or any of what we covered today with Tales of the Empire?
Well, I love this Tales series, so I hope they continue to bring this out year after year. And I just yeah, more Star Wars, more happiness. It's great, and yeah, enjoy your break, Ben and Gibbo, over the next week. I think this episode actually covers the amount of what 2 episodes would be
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yep.
but yeah, yeah. So enjoy your breaks, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Definitely. Yeah. See you all in 2 weeks. Gibbo, you got any last words for this episode?
No.
Love it.
And half
By
a
the
mouthful
way,
of sandwich. Sorry.
you're good. You're good. My bad. Shout out to Gibbo, by the way, behind the scenes, getting us all kinds of stuff today. I think that was like, pointing out the name of the Jedi and in the 5th episode, and Tales of Balin, and all, and Pelion, and all the kinds of stuff that went on in today's episode in the background. So shout out to you as well, and check out our reactions to all of the episodes we talked about today over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. They are in 2 separate videos. One, the Morgan Elsbeth video, the other, the Barris Offee video reactions. So again, those are available over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Shout out to you, Gibbo, for producing today's show, video, and assets, and you, who will be starring in the newest Star Wars show. Tales of the podcast producers.
What
I've
a
had it
boring
on
watch.
yeah, I've had it on good word that that's the next Tales series coming from Disney Star Wars. Be on the lookout for it, everyone. Well, we appreciate each and every single one of you listening. We love y'all. We'll catch you in 2 weeks' time with the break next week. See you later this month. Happy belated Star Wars Day to all of you. I would say it's fair to say Happy Star Wars Day as long as we're in the month of May. May kind of just feels like Star Wars month, you know. Happy Star Wars month to everyone. We appreciate each and every single one of you for listening. We will catch you in 2 weeks. Shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Maloney. And shout out to all these future Tales shows we're hopefully going to get. Looking forward to each and every single one of those as well. Thanks so much, each and every single one of you. And may the Force be with you.